You'll now see the vice president interrupting a narrative that was already spreading. The story in the news was that the United States would be giving Iran a reconstruction fund of $300 billion as if it were a prize for coming to the table.
We see oil prices dropping from a peak of $126 per barrel to about 80 today, and that's great progress. But there's also this. Gail reaches out to Iran and says, look, if you are willing to fulfill your obligations and allow real inspections of your nuclear program, then we will welcome you back into the world economy. I believe that the President of the United States wants to turn the page on 47 years of failed relations with Iran. However, this requires the Iranians to actually do their part in the agreement. When they say that billions of dollars in assets will be released, that's not true. The truth is that Iran will have a better and more prosperous future if it fulfills the obligations of this agreement. We'll see. That's one of the issues we'll resolve in the technical talks after Friday's signing.
On Monday, June 15, 2026. The White House tries to turn the tide of the Middle East crisis with a tough agreement, but succeeds. He came in to say that there is no direct payment, no money released upon signing, and no gifts. For the Iranian regime, what exists, according to him, is a conditional economic gateway, financed by Gulf nations. Only if Iran does the part it has always tried to avoid, ending the nuclear program. Dealing with enriched material and accepting inspections capable of providing security to the United States. That's where the Iranian hardliners start to lose their argument because the agreement doesn't deliver. The withdrawal of American forces from the region does not dismantle the United States' military presence in the Middle East and still maintains economic pressure as a central tool. While critics tried to sell the idea of a huge concession, Tehran put the White House's version on the table. If Iran does not comply, it does not get the relief it wants. At the same time, Hormuz is moving toward reopening. Oil drops close to $80 per barrel, and the market reacts as if it sees a show of strength, not weakness. Why did the regime become cornered? How did Trump turn pressure into an agreement? I'll tell you all about it in a moment. If you like this kind of straightforward and no-nonsense content, consider subscribing, because here we have videos like this every day. JT wins responded, after versions circulated saying that Iran had extracted a multi-billion-dollar reconstruction package from the United States. The accusation was serious because it turned a pressure agreement into an alleged reward for the regime. The mentioned reconstruction would only come in as a future possibility, linked to the Gulf nations and conditioned on Iran actually fulfilling its obligations. In simple terms, it's not a check in hand, it's a promise locked by requirements. And he made it clear that the White House still controls the most important part of the game, which is the release of economic benefits. The agreement under discussion is not based on blind trust in Iran. The logic presented by Vance is one of pressure for compliance. The regime would only have access to benefits if it ended its path to nuclear weapons, reduced its capacity to maintain enriched material, and accepted inspections. This changes the center of the narrative. The issue is not Iran making money. The issue is that Iran is required to prove under inspection that it is not using the negotiation to buy time. For the White House, this is the point that separates a tough agreement from diplomatic surrender. Donald Trump entered this crisis by maintaining military and economic pressure. Iran wanted a broader solution, including a reduction of the American presence in the region and relief from sanctions on more favorable terms. Vance made it clear that this is not going to happen the way Tehran wanted. Even if there is some adjustment in the size of the military presence, the United States will continue to have thousands of troops ready in the Middle East. In other words, the regime was not able to expel Washington from the region. This part carries weight because Iranian propaganda has always tried to portray the American withdrawal as a sign of defeat. After the announcement of the agreement, oil prices dropped sharply, with US crude approaching the $80 range. For the consumer, this means potential relief in the fuel supply chain. For the market, it means a reduction in the fear of an energy shock. For Trump, it means showing that the pressure on Iran was not just talk, but produced concrete results. On the front that worries the global economy most, the rise in stock markets also became part of the political package of the news. When the market reacts well to a deal of this size, the White House gains ammunition. He applied pressure, kept troops, held on to sanctions, and forced Iran to negotiate. And now sees oil prices falling, while investors breathe a sigh of relief. The critics, who were betting on permanent chaos, now have to deal with a different scenario. Hormuz moving towards reopening, oil prices dropping, and the White House saying that Iran did not receive direct payment. His concern was to prevent any package from being interpreted as a reward to the regime, which still carries a history of confrontation with the United States, Israel, and regional allies. The most sensitive issue continues to be the nuclear program. The White House did not present the agreement as simple. Hormuz reopening, Vance linked the reopening of the strait to the end of Iran's path to a military nuclear program. This puts the regime before a difficult choice: accept inspections and limitations to obtain economic relief, or refuse and continue under pressure. That's why Vance's speech irritates the hardliners so much. It prevents Tehran from turning the agreement into a costless victory. The benefit only exists if there is verifiable compliance. The American military presence also serves as a message. Iran wanted the United States to leave its bases and abandon strategic space in the Middle East. Vance rejected that idea. The White House may discuss adjustments, but it will not hand over the region to the Iranian regime. This detail is fundamental to understanding the political weight of the agreement. Trump is not just saying that he wants peace, he is saying that he wants peace. Without abandoning force, without handing over Hormuz, without releasing money in advance, and without letting Iran dictate the rules of regional balance. The reopening, that of Hormuz on Friday, appears as a practical victory because it hits wallets around the world. The pressure worked because the regime agreed to negotiate. The strait is on its way to reopening and the money was not given away for free. European diplomacy is also trying to join the stabilization effort. France and the United Kingdom have indicated their willingness to support a maritime mission to help ensure navigation in Hormuz. The route is of interest to several nations because energy and trade depend on it. But the political command of the narrative stayed with Trump and Vance because they were the ones who set the red line. No compliance, no benefit. Israel watches everything tensely. The Israeli government has always treated the Iranian nuclear program as an existential threat and does not want the agreement to ease pressure on Tehran without strict guarantees. Vance's statement helps in this regard because it reinforces that the goal is to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon and to maintain real oversight. Without that, any agreement becomes a dangerous pause. Iran tries to come out of the crisis with an image of resistance, but the structure presented by Vance puts pressure on the regime on three fronts. On the economic front, Tehran doesn't get free money. Now on the nuclear front, it has to deal with demands for shutdown, enriched stockpile, and inspection. On the military front, it can't expel the United States from the region. This combination explains the nervous reaction of the hardliners. Iran wanted to sell it as an easy victory. The hardliners wanted to hide the price of the concessions. The critics wanted to call the agreement a gift. The White House responded with a simple formula. Hormuz opens, oil prices drop, the market breathes. But the regime only gets benefits if it obeys, proves, and accepts inspection. I'm Milson Alves, an international affairs specialist, and my purpose is to keep you well informed with the truth every day. The news links are in the video description. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and at the end, check out the comments so you can be even more engaged with the community. Milson Alves.